always good to know. Okay, we have 5 people joining. That's great. We're also recording this meeting. If people couldn't join today, we can share it with them. Okay, audio sounds good. Before we get started, I'm going to go over a few of the webinar logistics here, just like the screen you're looking at right now. Everyone, upon entering the webinar, is on mute. So if you're trying to talk and no one's responding, you're probably on mute. You should have the power to mute or unmute yourself. Thanks, Bridget. And I also, as the host, have the ability to mute you if you're having some crazy background noise, or if you're having problems unmuting yourself. Send me a message in the chat box and I can unmute you. We also have a co-host today, Chapin Schnick, my wonderful colleague. She's monitoring the chat box, making sure I don't miss anything, and she will respond if you also have questions, technical issues in the chat box. Thanks, Chapin. Does anyone have any questions about the Zoom platform? We've got the poll up here, 5 people. It looks like we're all returning grantees. Hey, everybody. And just for all different kinds of grants, though, within the regional initiative grant, so that's good. And one person's not sure where they're applying to. Okay. Thanks for filling out that poll. That'll help a lot. The way I've structured this webinar today, we will, on the front end of the webinar, for returning applicants, you're going to hear what's new this year, since you already know a lot of the basics. Not a lot has changed, but there's a few things. And then if you're not sure what grant you want, just listen to the whole webinar. We're going to sort through which grant is for which organization. Okay. And this poll, and we will move on. Okay. Thanks much. Okay, I'm Stephanie Haines. I'm the Regional Initiative Grant Manager for Region 7. I also work in arts education and accessibility. Right off the bat, I want to make a note, and Chapa, will you type this into the chat box as well? If you need accessibility accommodations for this webinar or for the grant guidelines or the grant application, and really for anything that the IAC does, just contact me. You could have contacted me before the webinar, or now after. We can make sure everything's accessible for everyone. Thank you. Here's the overview for this webinar today. We're going to talk about just what the RIG grants are in general, briefly, and then we'll get into, like I said, for returning applicants, what's new this year. For those of you who maybe can't stay for the whole webinar, we'll get to that pretty early on. And then we'll go into more guidelines, eligibility, evaluation criteria, and application questions. And if you're fairly new to the IAC process, I recommend staying to the end. So why is it called the Regional Initiative Grant? The Regional Initiative Grant maybe doesn't inspire thoughts of art, the amazing arts happenings that we fund all over the state, but it's a practical name because we have regions. We've carved our state up into 11 regions. And today I'm specifically talking about the grant process in Region 7. And there are slight differences, not major differences, but slight differences region to region. So if you are not in one of the 7 counties in Region 7, a lot of this information will be useful to you, but you should check in with your own region on your guidelines and check in with your regional partner to see what's different in your region. So the two grants in the Regional Initiative Grant category are Arts Project Support and arts organization support. And then within arts organization support, there are 2 levels. So the Arts Project Support Grant provides funding to Indiana arts and non-arts organizations to support distinct arts activities, like a one-time event, single production, art classes. So it's a project, hence the name, in the arts. But that's the category that non-arts organizations can apply to, being libraries, parks, what else, schools, social service organizations, like organizations that work with people with disabilities or that serve veteran communities. That would fall into the project support category. You do still need to be a nonprofit for that. We'll get into that a little bit more later. And then the Arts Organization Support Grants are for arts organizations. And so that's more like annual operating support for ongoing year-round artistic activities. Your organization's mission, primary functions should be arts focused, and that you can apply in this category. That's you, with some other eligibility criteria. So for all the regional initiative grants, there are some general eligibility requirements that applies to everyone. For example, you must be a 501c3 organization. In APS, you can have a fiscal sponsor, but you still have to be sponsored by a 501c3 organization. You must be located in Indiana, having an address in Indiana in the region you're applying, incorporated in Indiana, make sure you're in good standing with the IAC, and have a governing body representative of the organization service area, so having a board of directors. Great, so that's just bottom line eligibility stuff. Then there is detailed eligibility that changes by grant. So for AOS, like I said, you have to be an arts organization. You also have to have operated for 2 years in Indiana. So you can't be an organization that just was freshly started in the same year and applied for the arts organization support. They have to have been operating for 2 years. For AOS level 1, we do have a minimum budget in Region 7 of $50,000. That's cash operating budget, and we use a 3-year average. So we look back at the last 3 years of your budget, last 3 budgets, and we average them to come out with at least $50,000. If you fall below the $50,000 minimum budget, you are probably still eligible for arts project support. In AOS 2, so the level 2 for arts organization support, the minimum budget is $250,000. Plus, you need a strategic plan that you will upload in your application, and you need at least 1 paid administrative staff. For arts project support grant, well, the main eligibility criteria is that you must be a 501c3 organization. And that includes, if you're not a 501c3 organization, you might be eligible to be fiscally sponsored by a 501c3 organization and still receive a project grant. If that's your case, I recommend you contacting me directly for a one-on-one consultation to see if we can make that work. So getting down to the logistics here, the timeline for this grant, for all regional initiative grants. Today is the LOI, that's not on here. The letter of intent through our online system is due today by 4:30 p.m. Eastern. All of our times are Eastern time. The letter of intent is only for arts organization support, so not the arts project support grant. Arts organization support if you did not receive a grant in the most recent year, last year, or this current year. So if you're new or have not applied in a recent year to arts organization support, you do need to submit a letter of intent by the end of the day today, by 4:30 p.m. Eastern today. So let's assume you all did that. Great job. Thanks. Thanks for getting that in on time. And you're either approved for AOS, you have already gotten AOS, and so you're eligible to just dive into the application, or you're applying for art project support. So now we're talking about the application. The full application is due March 5th. It's available now. You can start at any time, and it's due March 5th, 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Once we receive all those applications on March 5th, we process them, we look them all over again, and we connect with our public panels. We'll talk a little bit later about the panel process, but then the panels will review your applications April 22nd through the 25th. We have a lot of applications, so different applications will happen on different days. A more full list of which application will be reviewed on which day will come out later. After the panel process, we will notify awardees, grantees in early July, and you receive your first payment around September because of the state government payment process. And then your final grant for this next fiscal year for the award is July 13th, 2020. You can put that on your calendar now. We already know that date for your final grant. We split the way we pay out the funding, 75% in a first payment, 25% in the second payment, and after you submit your final grant report by July 13th, then you get the second payment, 25%. It's a little confusing because you think you know what your award amount is, and then you receive an amount in your bank account that's not that full amount of the award. It's 75%, down to the dollar. It's going to be an odd amount that gets deposited into your bank account. And then again, in the next September, you'll get another smaller amount. So just call me if you're not sure what your payment is or what got dropped into your bank account. All right, I'm going to take a pause here and check in on the chat box. You can also unmute yourself if you want to ask me a question, or you can submit a question in the chat box. Great. Is anyone having trouble hearing or seeing the screen? We'll have Chapin monitor the chat box if anyone wants to chime in. All right, we're going to talk about the guidelines. You can find them on our website. And like I said, we're in Region 7, and it is region specific. That's why we have this big, huge chart of all the different regions and the 3 different grants across each region. So when you navigate, here, I'll show you. I'm going to pop out of this. Hopefully it'll let me fix this presentation.
I do have a question about whether you can do both. Yeah,
great question. With regard to project support, may our organization request both AOS and project support? That is a great question. The answer is no. An organization can only apply for one or the other, an organization support grant or project support grant. You can think about who else is partnering with you on the project to see if they might be eligible to apply separately from your organization for a project grant. So I am trying to go to www.in.gov/art, that's plural. Okay, if you're navigating on our website, and I open up the Programs tab, we're talking about the Regional Initiative Grant. You want to click Download the Guidelines, and here's that big chart that I showed. And these pop open to PDFs of the full guidelines. Guidelines are so important. It's a few pages of text, but they're very important. We wouldn't put anything in here that wasn't important for you to read. You've got all the information you should need to know about this grant when you're ready to really read this fully. A couple things I want to note. In the Arts Project Support, you can find your average grant award here on the first page. So in Region 7, the average grant historically for this region is about $3,685 and some odd cents. And when you're looking at the Arts Organization Support Grant, oh, that's the wrong region, 7. There's me. You have to scroll all the way to the bottom to find the average grant award amount. Very bottom, and it's based on your budget size. So like I talked about the 3-year average budget size, we have tiers for those, and the grant award average correlates with your budget size. You can find that information in the guidelines. You can find all the eligibility information you need in the guidelines. So everything I'm talking about today plus more is in the guidelines. So we highly recommend you download these, you keep them close before you start applying. Okay, great. Is there another chat question? Thanks. Okay, good. All right, back to the presentation. Make sure you're clicking the Region 7 guidelines and not Region 5 like I did the first time. Okay, so like I said, look for the average funding amounts. They're there in the guidelines so you get an idea of what you might receive. For APS, in the guidelines, it tells you the minimum request is $500, the maximum is $5,000. For APS, it's important to note that whatever you request, when you make your budget and submit your budget in your application, you must show a one-to-one match, meaning if you ask for $5,000, your full budget should be $10,000. You're getting $5,000 from the IEC, $5,000 comes from other sources. Your full budget is $10,000 when you submit it. That's an example. You don't have to ask for a full $5,000, but whatever you ask for, you have to match 1-to-1. Now, of the match, so in that example, $5,000 you're matching, 50% of it can be in kind. So that's the maximum of in kind, 50%, not for the matching amount. It's a little bit complicated. Feel free to call me one-on-one if you start filling out your budget and you're still not sure on the one-to-one match and the in-kind role. I also encourage you to look, there are links in the guidelines about what does in-kind mean for the IAC, and you can find some more information on our website about what in-kind is. In the Arts Organization Support Guidelines, you'll see in the application, you'll see you don't request an actual set amount. The funding that we allocate is based upon the grant category that you're in, the level that you're in, and the organization's budget size, as I said before. So Arts Organization Support, you're not requesting a certain amount. In the project support, you are requesting a set amount. Also want to note in the guidelines, I'm not going to talk about it in this webinar, but in the guidelines, there's a list of eligible expenses. So when you're talking about what you're going to spend your funding on, when you're describing it in the application, there are certain things that our funding cannot be spent on. So look at the list. It's a bullet point list of eligible expenses, especially if you're in the project support category. Make sure you're asking for eligible activities and expenses. I should also know that in arts organization support, you're also required to do a one-to-one match. It's just that one, when you're already meeting the $50,000 budget minimum, it's not difficult to meet the budget match. We don't talk about it much, but you will have to kind of guarantee that your budget has eligible matching funds in it for our grant. Okay, so for returning applicants, we made it to the what's new year, what's new this year. In arts organization support, if you're a returning applicant, please note that we updated some definitions that may impact how you describe your activities and the narrative questions in your application. So the definitions for community engagement, the definition for artistic quality, and the definition for organizational excellence. Those were all revised this year. Check those out on our website. They might, I'm not sure if they're detailed. I think they're in the guidelines too, in detail. And if not, you'll find them on our website easily. The big one, I think, in AOS, or AOS returning applicants, we have changed what we ask of you to upload and provide in financial documentation, your budget. So one thing we changed is that we want to let you talk about your fiscal year. We work in a July 1, June 30 fiscal year, and in the past we've asked people to only use those dates when they report on their budget numbers. But this year we're letting it be, if you're on a calendar year budget, if you're on a different September fiscal year budget, that's fine. Just report how you report for your own fiscal year for this application. We're going to ask for a profit and loss statement. I will show you an example later in the webinar. We'll go through the application and there's some examples embedded. There's links embedded in the application question. We'll show you what we expect from the profit and loss statement. So the profit and loss statement is going to look like a side-by-side with the budget for a previous year and the actuals of that year, your budget of your current year, and the actuals or the projection for the fiscal year. So notice I didn't say future fiscal year. We're also getting rid of the request we have of you to look at your future fiscal year. As of March of this year, when you're applying for this, you may not have even conceived of your next fiscal year's budget. So we're not going to ask you for that like we have in the past. Just the 2 years. We also have, in addition to the profit and loss, we also have the statement of activities. No, what is the other?
Balance sheet.
Balance sheet, yeah. So those 2 documents will be uploaded in the application this year. And lastly, for AOS, an update this year. There's some changes in how we ask how you're doing community engagement. So just note that when you're writing your narrative, if you're looking back at old grant applications and copying them forward, we've changed how we ask about community engagement and IDEA, which stands for inclusion, diversity, equity, and access. So when we ask about your activities in those 2 areas, note that we've updated them a little. If you're a returning APS grantee, same kind of thing, look for updates in the definitions for community engagement and artistic quality. Just those 2, and that's specifically in the criteria, the definition of the evaluation criteria. And then you also have updates in your community engagement narrative questions and the community impact question. And then we have updated the fiscal agent details. If you're someone applying an APS who's not a 501c3, but you want to be fiscally sponsored by a 501c3, there's some new rules. So make sure you connect with me if you want to use the fiscal sponsorship option. Also, for all returning applicants, if you would like to see a copy of the comments from when your application was reviewed before, I can provide that to you. Just contact me and give me a few days to gather it, and I'll make sure you get feedback if you would like it. Okay, now I'm going to go into evaluation criteria. This is what panelists will use to measure your application. We don't measure application against application. You're not getting compared to other organizations. You're only getting compared to the criteria that we set forth in the evaluation criteria. So in the guidelines document, there are the big overarching criteria definitions in there, but there also is a more detailed evaluation outline on our website that the panelists will use when they're reading through your application. So I'm going to show you here on our website. You'll see under the section called Helpful Links, and I'll also help you navigate there. There's the AOS evaluation criteria and the APS evaluation criteria. Those are PDF documents. Go back to here. Okay, back on our Regional Initiative Grants page. And well, here it's at the bottom of the Regional Initiative Grants page under Resources. You can open up these criteria. You can see what, at the top here, you can read what the minimum score for funding consideration is, 75 for level 1 AOS, 80 for AOS level 2. On APS, it's also 75. Yeah, 75 minimum score. 100 points possible. To be considered for funding, you have to score at least 75. In APS, the criteria is split up into 3 categories. Artistic quality is worth 30 points, and there's 3 bullet points in there. Community engagement is worth 40 points. Make sure you put some work in your community engagement answers, and project management is worth 30 points as well. And you'll see this is even bullet pointed down to 10-point increments. This is going to be really helpful, and when I open the application later, you'll see we've even designed the application to match in these same categories, so you know what all your answers in that category are being measured against. You can really tailor to these criteria. The full criteria and the full criteria. For arts organization support, there's 4 categories. Organizational excellence, they're all weighed the same, 25 points. Community engagement, arts education, and artistic quality. See what my guidelines are. Like I said, in the guidelines towards the bottom, I hope this isn't making anyone busy. In the guidelines, we have the artistic quality, community engagement project. We have the categories there with the big overview definitions, but for the little bullet point information, you need to open the full criteria document. Great. Let's take a pause here. I've been talking for a while. Any questions? Enter them in the chat box, or you can unmute yourself if you'd like to ask me a question. Well, thanks for being here. Okay, great. You're just listening, taking it in. Good. And thanks to everyone who is joining us here. Okay, I'm going to get back into the scoring. I just showed you the evaluation and how the points are spread out and everything. So how does it actually get scored? We have a public panel process. It's a open, public, transparent process. We get a conflict-free panel of your peers, citizen experts or professionals in the arts, and we gather a panel of about 5 or 6 people. They each review every application. And again, they review it against this evaluation criteria. They score each section, kind of how we've shown the scoring for each section, and that adds up to a total. That panelist has a total for your application. Then we take all 5 or 6 panelists and we average their score. You get one total average score. We do have some normalization magic that we apply because we have so many different panels and different people reviewing, and that ultimately will turn out to your one score for your application. Hopefully it falls above the eligibility consideration, funding consideration score of 75 or 80 if you're in level 2 of arts organization score. We don't provide, after the public panel, we don't provide details on your score. We won't tell you which panelist scored what amount. What we will do though is gather the comments anonymously, so you know which parts of your application really shine for the panel and which ones you maybe could have written better to explain your project or your organization, and that can help you in the future. So we will provide you comments. And then again, after we panel in late April, you'll get your notification after our commission meeting and in early July. I also want to note that you can observe your application being reviewed live. The panels are open to the public. We encourage everyone to come and listen in on it. It's great experience and feedback to hear the panel in person, maybe hear how they review one application as opposed to how they review yours, and just see what resonates with these people reading your application. So I know that our panels will happen the week of April 22nd. I don't know which day your application will be reviewed yet, but I will set that review order list with the exact dates and times later, after we get everything in March. And we have chosen to have our panels at the Indiana Humanities office, which is on Delaware, around 16th Street. They have some nice free street parking and a beautiful historic home building that they're in. We're going to have it on the first floor of that building. So come join me. Okay, so if you've done your LOI or will be doing it today, maybe you've already been in our online system, and I think most of you are returning, so maybe you've been in our online system, but I'm going to touch on that briefly. So we love the auto saving in the online system. It kind of alleviates some of the past headaches of, oh, my computer crashed and nothing got saved or whatever. But this auto save every 100 characters or when you switch questions. There's also a save button at the bottom if you're one of those superstitious people who really is worried about saving. There's a save button at the bottom and you can save whenever you want. There's not a lot of ability for formatting, like bullet points and italics and bold. That stuff's not going to come through if you write it in Word document and then try to copy and paste it in, so just remember that. And then when you're really, really ready to submit it, there's a submit button at the bottom. After you submit it, no more editing. You can save it, close your browser, come back another day. If you're just saving it, you can keep editing it for a long time. So when you finally click submit, then no more editing. It's locked. Okay, I'm going to go to the application in the system so you can see what that looks like. Just a note that AOS 1, level 1, remember that's a budget size kind of consideration, is on a 1-year cycle. You apply every year. If you're applying in AOS 2 and you qualify, that's a 2-year cycle. You'll do a final grant report if there's not another application in the second year. continue to get funding in the second year as long as you remain eligible and your final grant report is adequate. In the Arts Project Support Grant, in the application, we're going to look at the budget sheet. We have a specific template we want you to use if you're applying in the project support grant category. So I want to show you that budget sheet in a minute and what the matching requirements are, and look at the links for what in-kind means. Okay. The easy to remember link for getting into our online system is www.in.gov/art, which is our homepage, but then /apply. That will take you to this lovely page, which is our grant interface page. Oh, and now I've logged myself out. Okay. Okay, this is the, I'm going to make this bigger. How's this look, Chapin? This? Yeah, okay. This is a preview of what you're going to see when you go into the Arts Project Support Grant. So we'll start there. Project Support Grant. And if I collapse this again, you'll see we have these categories of questions in the application. And in the middle here, these perfectly align with that evaluation criteria. These are these narrative questions like related to artistic quality, community engagement, project management, and budget. Those are our evaluation criteria categories, and they align pretty well. We're going to give you lots of good info at the beginning. Don't forget the criteria, don't forget the system, and yada yada, who to contact if you have issues. Remember, APS has a fiscal agent, sponsorship consideration. So if that applies to you, you'll put yes here, but if not, just put no and nothing will happen. It'll be fine. Start with some real general information about your organization. Easy to answer. Here's where you're going to tell us your mission, your project title, and a summary of your project. Really easy stuff. Now we're getting into more of the narrative questions. You're talking about artistry of your organization, specifically of your project, this project that you're doing. How do you find your artists, et cetera, et cetera. And here's an upload button. You want to upload sample promotional materials to show your artistic quality. And you can also link to, so this is a required question. So you have to upload something here, PDF file, and you can have up to 3 pieces of material combined into one PDF, and upload that one PDF here. You got social media links you can show, link to if you have a video somewhere that you want to link. And then there's more options to upload more video or photos, JPEGs or whatever, through this upload file or link. Lots of ways to show artistic quality here. Community engagement section, we're going to give you a lot of info at the front end here. We're going to tell you exactly what we're looking for in community engagement. And this information tells you exactly what we want, and it is also exactly what the panelists are going to be looking for. These are links here. You can find more information, support materials through the links. If you're still not quite sure what community engagement means to us, there's a video, there's a ladder, which is like a graphic that shows you what parts, what levels of community engagement are, and then this side-by-side chart, what's the difference between community engagement and audience development. Community engagement is going to be a lot of narrative where you're telling us about what you're doing in your community, with your community, and how you're including them. There's an inclusion question and community impact. Participation is important. We also need you to report at the end of your project on how many people participated. So think about how you track participants. And then here, what I really want to show you is the budget. So project management, timeline, who's in charge of the project, financial documentation of your organization. So in general, this shows you're a healthy organization through uploading your income and expense and balance sheet. Here's the upload button. You also have a space to explain if you have any issues that you need to explain about your finances. And here is the linked budget template. So this is very important for our project support. We want to know how the funding is going with your project. So we made you a specific template to fill out. So I recommend here, it's opened in the browser, but I always recommend please save it to your computer first, because if you're filling it out in your browser window and then you go to download it, it may not download with all your information saved into it. It's going to download the original file that's blank. So download it first somewhere on your computer and then start filling it out. We've got these, it's not going to let me type, there we go. We've got these boxes that are blue. That's where you can type your numbers. So type in some random thing. And then here in the big box, you're going to explain how you got to your numbers that are in the right column. And we have just a few categories of income that you're going to explain where your income's coming from your project, and then expenses. What are you spending that income on? How are you categorizing those things? Okay, so then you fill that out, you download it, you save it, fill it out, and then you re-upload it. And upload it right here, the completed budget. If you have any question of whether it worked, if it didn't save correctly or if the numbers aren't totaling correctly, go ahead and upload it here and then contact me. I can come in on the administrative side and check it out and say, yep, looks good. It uploaded perfectly, or you're right, it's blank. Let's try it again. And if you also have any problems with the PDF, with Acrobat Reader, contact me and we will work through it. We're going to ask you for the totals. So you've got your budget sheet that you filled out and uploaded. We're also going to ask you to match the total of the grant request, your income, and your expenses and your in-kind, and type them into these boxes. If you said you're asking for $2,500, you said you're asking for $2,500 on your budget template, then you're going to write $2,500 in this box here too. Same with whatever your total income was, you know, $7,500 total income with all your matching. Expenses should also be $7,500. Those should balance. And then there's in-kind. Tell us how much in-kind you're getting. Shouldn't be more than 50% of your match. Okay. We do have an accessibility, and Katie, you're going to make me type in here. If you don't fill out a required box, it won't let you continue. So that's one of the beauty things. The accessibility statement is important as you're receiving state and federal monies through this grant. Everything that you do related to this grant, whether your project or organization support, needs to be accessible. If someone comes to you with a request to access your project or organization through alternative accommodations, you need to do that. And it sounds daunting, but it doesn't have to be. And accessibility is one of my areas of specialty. So if you are feeling overwhelmed by the accessibility statement or anything therein, call me. And I've talked to a lot of people through this, what it might look like for your specific location, your project, etc. And that's it. And then you sign it and submit it. All right, that's APS, and I 11:15. I want to wrap this up in the next 10 minutes or so. So we're going to jump to, I got logged out here. I'm going to jump to our project support, or our organization support. Excuse me. Let me give my computer a minute to catch up. Any questions? Let me check my list. The business, application. Okay. So on this website here, I'm looking at it just like an applicant would look at it. When you log in, you're going to see your dashboard. Here's the test I made for the webinar. This should be exactly what you're seeing. Once you're approved for your application, you should see this here, edit application, and then click there. And voila, I'm in. Similar. You're going to have a lot of information at the top. Don't forget, here's a link to the full criteria with all the bullet points that I was talking about before. Don't forget about the system. We're going to give you all this information right up front. You can always come back to it. Very first question, you're going to determine for yourself whether you're in the level 1 or level 2 arts organization support. And we remind you of the criteria for that. $250,000 3-year average budget, strategic plan, paid staff. Fiscal agent question, that's if you're serving to sponsor someone else. And then getting into your basic questions about your organization. So remember, the criteria is split into 4 categories, and we've got 4 sections here. Organizational excellence, tell us about your mission and your organization. If you're AOS 2, clearly here it says AOS 2 only. You're going to upload your strategic plan here. This isn't required, so if you're AOS 1, just skip it. Tell us about your board and staff. Here's your financials. Give us your fiscal year 18, 17, and 16 operating cash income. So those are the budget numbers we're going to use. And here's where you average those 3 years together and give us that 3-year average that we're looking for what level of AOS you're in. And then here's what I really wanted to show with the financial documentation. Income and expense statement example. Here's your profit and loss statement. Fiscal year 18 budget and actual fiscal year 19 budget and projection, because we're not finished with the fiscal year yet. So you've got your examples here and examples of balance sheet you can click through. When you have your profit and loss statement and your budget, your balance sheet, combine them into one PDF, and right here is your upload file, where you upload your file. Again, if you have any issues with your budget that you think the panel might need to fully grasp why your budget looks the way it does, you can explain it here. Community engagement, I would encourage you to spend some time answering these questions thoughtfully. It's a big part of the scoring. Arts education, there's one question here. You're telling us all about your arts education here in one question. And artistic documentation, very similar. You're uploading things and providing links to videos and images that can show your artistic quality. Okay, participant tracking and accessibility statement. Sign and submit. Simple as that. Okay, let's see. One last note, just pay attention, especially in APS, to the balance between expenses and income. We want a balanced budget. And also look twice at the matching requirements. I keep bringing that up because it's very important. Okay, I am done with my formal presentation. Thanks for being here. We're going to open up for Q&A now. Oh, I got to go back to my presentation because Bridget put in a very fun gift for us. Let's go. Any questions? We've got questions, and I think you guys will do great, and I'm here to help. We've got, almost 3 months to make this happen. We can do it. You can unmute yourself if you want to ask me a question over the phone or a computer, or you can add to the chat box.
Hi, Stephanie.
Hey. Yep.
It's Julie Summers-Newman. I'm with Heartland Film.
Okay.
If we want to get the comments from last year's or 2 years ago panel before we start, is that something you said we should call you or email, or what's the best?
I think if you email me, that'll be good because I can just send it right back to you via email.
Okay, thank you.
You can get it 2 years ago, right? That's not unfounded. The A was 2 people.
Are the panel's comments and founded from 2 years ago?
That's what I'm asking you.
They should be.
Yeah, they should be. We'll find something.
And then the other question is, will you still be wanting some of us to serve on other panels?
Yeah. We do have a need for panelists always. Sure, yeah, there's a section of our website that you can fill out a panelist form if you're willing to be a panelist. And are you volunteering, Julie?
I don't know. I just was wondering. I know I've been asked to do it the last couple of years by Bob, so I just wondered if that was kind of part of the protocol of, that we all help serve on other panels.
Oh, not required at all, but yeah, it is a. What did you think of the process?
I thought it was helpful as a grant writer to kind of see from the other side, definitely. But it is time consuming. I mean, it's definitely time consuming reviewing and being prepared ahead of time. I mean, the panel itself goes faster, obviously, than the time spent, getting ready for it.
Yeah. No, we are in need of panelists. And if you know of someone that you think would benefit from doing this and has not done it, you can share that info with me. If you want to volunteer, you can email me. And there's also other grants outside of the regional initiative grants, like the individual advancement program, which is for individual artists, our Arts in the Park grants that we're always looking for panelists for. So if not in this grant category, maybe if you volunteer, maybe you might be put in a different grant category as a panelist. Thanks for asking, Julie.
Stephanie, I have a question.
Yeah.
This is Roger Sell. Yeah, this is Roger Sell with the Indianapolis Women's Chorus. And I was wondering if the panelists are local. And the reason I'm asking, we've applied for grants before where they have panelists from other areas who might not be familiar with some of the references that we make. And so I just kind of wondered where the panelists are coming from.
That's a great question. I think the Arts Council of Indianapolis tries really hard to bring outside panelists, but no, ours are mostly local for this category. I would say majority are going to be from Central Indiana.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and we try to get panelists that aren't familiar with the organizations necessarily, but a blend of both is typically what we'll have.
Yep, everyone who is on the panel who's reviewing your application has certified they have no conflict of interest with your organization, meaning they're not being paid by your organization, they don't work for your organization, or have other interests in it. So the panelists should be familiar with Central Indiana related things, but we'll have certified that there's no conflict of interest.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Mhm. Okay. All right, well, again, thanks for being here. Thanks for those last few questions. And I'm available. Like I said, we've got some time. So if you need to chat one-on-one, if something was brought up more questions and answers here, we can chat one-on-one. And yeah, that concludes our webinar. Thanks everyone for being here.
Thanks,
Have a
Stephanie.
great day. Thank you.
Bye, thank you.
Bye-bye. I'm gonna stop the recording first.